here we are. We're into the show now. This is Jerry A. Thompson with JB Yates, and this is our next installment of the Pivot Play podcast. JB, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm super psyched. So our audience will learn that you're not just my guest; you are my cousin.
There we go.
So super hyped to have you. So you actually are my first relative to be on Pivot Play.
Very nice. So I'm going to claim that makes me your favorite cousin now. That'll cause problems, I'm
Well,
sure.
there's a list of them I could tell you. Probably starting with Patrice that would come looking for you. Leslie,
Yes.
uh, maybe even Bunsey. Who knows? And I'm throwing out names. People have no idea who they are. But anyway, so I'm trying to set this up. So the reason that I wanted you on was a few weeks ago. We did. There was a family. I don't want to call it a reunion, but it was like a Zoom get together. It was a bunch of us that were together all day. I think it was
All
an
day.
8 to 10 hour day. But we'll call it a virtual family reunion. Someone can correct me later if that's not how they want to brand it. But and so we went through the day, and it was great to have a bunch of family on there on Zoom for 8 to 10 hours. But we had different sessions that we did. And so I believe that I did one that was talking about how to thrive during this time.
Right.
And then a session or two later, I don't know if it was right after, now I don't remember that part, but then you came on and just like blew the doors off the place. So do you remember the name of your session?
My session was What's Holding You Back?
There you go. So how to thrive and then what's holding you back. So there was some connectedness between what I was talking about with the family and what you were talking about with the family. And to try to set this up even more for people who don't know. So our family in particular is very unique in that we have a lot of giftedness in our family.
Yes, very much.
A lot of people who just innately know how to do things. So by and large, if you see people in my family somewhere, they are likely going to have some leadership or some position of influence. Like we just kind of gravitate to running stuff. It's just how it
We can't help it. It's not our fault.
But the roots of that come from my grandfather, your great grandfather, Elijah Thompson, who was a preacher and a pastor. But what I would say about that is even back in the 40s and 50s, from everything that I understand, he was the real deal.
Wow.
In that, like, I don't even know if you know some of this, JB, but I think I have him back now, is a series of reel-to-reel tapes of Granddad preaching. And so he would travel around and take the family. And so I've heard a couple of those sermons from back in the 50s. And think about it, a black preacher on the road recording his sermons.
Wow.
Right.
Back then. Right.
So it says a couple things. One is he was forward thinking. The second is sort of that, like we're gadgeteers, right, in this family. So for him to do that and now to have those things preserved, but from the standpoint of his character and being in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, where he did a lot of his work, right? Because he was a minister and a pastor, but he was also a builder, right? So we know in Woodland, PA, there's several houses that he built that are still standing. The church in Marple, PA, he built. I mean, so he had his hands to a lot of things, but he was so widely respected, but across denominations in the area because of just his stature and his integrity and his true commitment to what he was doing. And then, he and grandma got together and they had all these kids, right? Who were very interesting in their own right. So my dad was the baby. Your grandmother, I don't even know where she falls in line with them.
That is a good question. I want to say she's like third or fourth oldest.
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
but saying all that to say that through that bloodline, we've just been very fortunate to be a very gifted group of people. But what I thought what kind of really blew me away that day in hearing you speak was largely in our family. The shine goes to if you preaching, teaching, singing, playing an instrument, holding some position because church was such a big part of our upbringing.
Yeah.
And then some other people came along that demonstrated different skills, and we just don't talk. It just doesn't really get talked about.
Yeah.
So I was both surprised very pleasantly and then just blown away by what we talked about, what you presented to the family. And I'm like, see, my cousin got it going on. That's what I'm talking about. So all that to say, super thrilled to have you here and looking forward to the conversation. So that said, help our audience understand kind of your background and what it is that you do.
Kind of who I am. Okay.
Mhm.
So for the last 14 years, I have been in post secondary education, more career focused, specialized education. So, kind of, the opposite of your 2 or 4 year traditional, more hands on, career focused, get right into it type of education for careers that truly are in demand. And so right now I have 14 campuses that I provide training and support for in terms of around, just really trying to motivate and encourage people from a recruitment standpoint to kind of realize that they don't have to stay stuck or that they don't have to stay in a career that they don't like, that you don't have to settle for less, that there's options for you and you have choices.
Right.
And so I'm really big on that, just showing people that they have choices. So I've spent the last 14 years doing that, all across the continental US. I mean, right now my territory happens to be the Northeast, but I've had campuses on the West Coast in Arizona, down south in Mobile and Pensacola and Birmingham. And so, just kind of all over. And there's a commonality that exists, whether you're in a small little rural town in Cookeville, Tennessee, or whether you're in an inner city in Baltimore or in Philadelphia. um, you want more. You want to be able to provide for your family.
Right.
However that looks in your neighborhood, you want to be able to ultimately, enjoy what you do, be successful, and provide for yourself and your family.
Right. So given that, you already got my mind going. So when you talked about this commonality, so the people that you interact with, especially during this time that we're in, right, the challenges with COVID, and
Yeah.
we have all this social unrest, and the economy is fragile, whether people realize that or not. So the people that you're dealing with, do you see them? Where are they on the scale from highly optimistic to hopeless? Like where are people? Where's their thinking and their outlook on the future?
We are definitely closer to hopeless than we are optimistic. I mean, and that comes from turning on the TV, turning on social media. That word essential got thrown around an awful lot. And so if your job shut down or you were quarantined and all of a sudden you're being told you're not essential, right? So now it's like, well, I'm hopeless. What do I
Right.
do? And then on the flip side of that, because we work with a lot of people also in healthcare.
Hmm.
So, okay, so my job is essential, but it also means I'm putting myself at risk. And
Right.
so I'm out here every day in the midst of this pandemic that people don't know anything about or understand.
Right.
And so even for them, there's sort of, they're somewhere in between. They're probably somewhere closer in between as opposed to being more hopeless. But
Right.
people are just lost and really trying to find what they can do and really being willing to sort of lean into something new and look at things a little bit differently.
So let's jump into that a little bit. And so from my own perspective, right? I'm in the corporate space, and work for a very large global company, that does business in almost 100 countries around the world, and even in the St. Louis area, just sort of had this character moniker of a very secure place to work.
Right.
Right. And then COVID shows up, and then people who had been in their jobs for, many years found their name on a list. Right. And so they were first furloughed, and
We all learned
then
a new term, furlough. No
I
one knew what
know.
furlough.
And you know what? And I've unfortunately had to be one of the persons to create those lists. If I
Yeah.
know what furlough really means, other than there's the opportunity we may bring you back. And then they went to laid off, which effectively meant that they were no longer employees. But I thought laid off meant that you still were, so all. But the
Furlough was
point
a
is,
nice way of saying
right,
you were laid off. I mean, you were laid off both in both ways,
right.
basically.
But then your key card no longer works in the building. To me, that's
Right.
the same as fired. But hey, but I bring that up to say you had people who were really comfortably positioned and were on that track, right? Like they got homes that they paid for and funding their retirement and sending their kids to school and taking vacations and living a very comfortable middle class to upper middle class life. And then the rug is pulled out from under them. They hit the streets at the same time. A bunch of other people who were equally qualified,
Yeah.
are hitting the streets. And so when you've encountered people who are, and we'll talk about the ones who are stuck.
Yeah.
What about the ones who are dazed?
You know what? The ones who are dazed, what I will say is that like you hit your head, right? It's like the cartoons where the little birds would go around you for a minute.
Right,
Well, eventually the birds kind of disappear, right?
right,
And so once you come out of that dazed sort of haze that you were in, I do believe those individuals started churning their brains towards maybe living out dreams that they had wanted to, or turning something that was a hobby into something that they could actually turn into a business and make money. And so at least those individuals, although they were a little dazed, they had some sort of skills under their belt, right? They had
hmm,
some type of positions and careers previously. And although they were forced to sort of figure out kind of what's next, a lot of them kind of shook it off and said, okay, let's figure out sort of what I can do, even if it's not within this same industry. And so I've been excited to watch people kind of step into some of their dreams in terms of, you know, podcasts, home businesses, just taking things, like I said, that were hobbies, or at least what they thought were hobbies, and now trying to turn it into something that they could earn a living at, and
right.
how to go about doing that.
So and there's the magic word. You said exactly what I was about to get to. So people can manufacture a what, right? As long as
Right.
we're connected to our sense of curiosity, maybe we have a bucket list, we have our imagination, so we can manufacture a what. Where I see people typically getting stuck is on the how,
Yeah.
right? Because there's rarely a dream, rarely a mission or vision that does not have to be funded in some way,
Agreed.
right?
Right.
Or in some of that funding could be actual capital, but the other more critical capital sometimes is time itself,
Yeah.
right? And then there's this other component of, I have this thing I want to do, I don't know if I know enough about it. So now there's a learning requirement that has to go into that. So piecing together the components of the how, what are your thoughts around that? And what are some of the conversations? Because maybe this is where that stuckness, if that's a word,
That come.
that's where getting stuck comes from, is
Yeah.
I know what the what is. how?
So one of the things that I look at, I get stuck on this word sort of rebranding, right? You think about companies that start off one way or have a hiccup, right?
Mhm.
Have something that goes bad, and then they're forced to sort of rebrand that company so that they can move forward. And essentially that's what people are having to do. They're having to rebrand themselves, in terms of finding out how to turn, like you said, the what, into some actionable steps to make it move forward. And so the first thing, for me is about self awareness. I think it's super important for you to be self aware of who you are, what skills you have, things that hold you back, right? Like, just kind of a self awareness of yourself, in terms of what makes you unique, what are some of the things that, kind of set you apart. And when you have that level of self awareness, it kind of starts you towards the steps of identifying what you're going to need to continue to move forward. I don't believe we accomplish anything in this life without the help or support of others. And
Right,
so, trying to find those good resources, whether it's career coach, a life coach, a business partner, someone that is able to kind of help you, pour into you, celebrate you, encourage you, and push you. Like, you need those things. But it
right,
starts with, to me, it starts with that self awareness of being able to acknowledge, okay, here's what I'm great at, but this is an area that's not my forte. So I need to get some resources for the business side, or the
right,
financial and the accounting piece of this, or being able to start and set up an LLC, and those kinds of things. And so
right,
the good thing though is, in this day and age that we're in, with this wonderful internet and good old Google, like, if you don't pick up your phone and say into your phone, Google, how do you start a business? Like,
right.
at least start there, right? Like,
Well, so, but JB, so a couple things with that, right? So, oh man, you said self awareness. I remember picking up a book, it may have been recommended to me, called Fearless Leadership,
okay.
right? And I'm thinking, this is going to be about, doing push ups for the boardroom, and, how to really put your thing down, and put people in their place, and, stand up. And what it really turned out to be, a lot of it was about self awareness, and it talked a lot about blind spots,
Mm,
right? So there are things that all of us are, that are part of the equation that produces our results. Those variables are there. We are the owner of those. We have zero awareness and visibility to those things, which is why they're called blind spots.
right.
So we don't know, the ways that we may affect people when we walk into a room, or how we generally treat people, or how we value information or value people's time. I mean, it can go down a list of things, right? We can appear very short with a person who deserves our attention. There's just a number of things, but again, they're blind spots because we don't know them. So when you say self-awareness, to me, self-awareness is a graduated position,
Mm,
right? Like, there has to be something that gets you there, that says, in fact, your best friend might be a mirror, right? For you to be able to see yourself. I don't know how many people I see getting there, right? And again, they're
yeah.
super excited. I mean, I love what's. They're so excited about the what, but then you do have to structure somewhat of a plan, and then people are filling that in with stuff I don't even understand. Like you said, if you can't Google, how to start a business. I had a friend of mine reach out to me just yesterday or the day before, to speak with someone for information that I knew, that if you just type this into YouTube, you're gonna get like 500 hits of people that's gonna tell you exactly what you're asking me. And then they didn't do what I said anyway. So but that's an example to me of a lack of self-awareness, to say that there's a gap between where I am and where I want to get to. And most of that is going to be knowledge and experience that I need, right? So I want to go back to self-awareness because you spoke about it so simply, but I don't see a ton of it. Maybe I need to change the people I hang around, but I just don't see a ton of it when I look at even the masses of people. What they're looking for is a target, someone to blame, someone to point the finger out, that absolves them of getting from the what and the how to a when, right? And actually executing on that thing. So I said a bunch of words there, but
No, but here's with anything, you can't have one without the other, right? So
mhm,
like you have to have a self-awareness, but part of having that self-awareness, because you mentioned it, like those blind spots to me are why I have accountability partners, why I have people that are able to sort of check me or to say, hey, no, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. And so part of the self awareness, though, and why people aren't always comfortable with accountability partners or even that word accountability. I mean, you know this. And when we hire, people say all the time, oh, I don't want someone who micromanages me. I don't want to
right,
be micromanaged. But let's be truthful. Some people need to be micromanaged,
right,
right? Like if you're self-aware and knowing yourself to say, I am a big idea person and I have all of these ideas, but
right,
I am lacking some of the skill set to turn that idea into
right,
execution, then you need an accountability partner. You need that person to see that blind spot and be okay with them sort of holding you accountable. And listen, I'm big on accountability partners that just aren't like bring the hammer. Like it's not about bringing the hammer. It's a combination of they push you, they pour into you, they can celebrate you, but they're gonna hold your feet to the fire. And so I think it's okay to say, you know what, I'm the idea person, and maybe I need somebody who's gonna be the executor, right? Who can
right,
come in and execute. And
right,
that's and if you're someone who has been toying around with all of these ideas and all of these what's and all these grand plans, but nothing's happening for you, then what I would say to those people is you need an accountability partner.
right,
Run and get one, a coach, someone that can meet the two or connect the dots for you for sure.
right. So then requires a person to have a handle on maybe a couple things. One
Mhm.
is trust,
Yes.
the other is transparency,
Ooh.
right? You have to be willing to let someone see you naked, right? And
Hmm.
and I don't mean physically, but figuratively. And even when you go back to these accountability partners, I man, I so believe what you're saying, because like I'm very much about self accountability.
Yeah.
But there's some things that, because it may kind of be right up against that line of where I start to lose confidence. There might be a bit of imposter syndrome, which we can come back and talk about that. I need other people to sometimes encourage me and sometimes remind me, right, of what I'm capable of, but also maybe even um, remind me of things that I've done, right? Because sometimes the bright lights are on and you can forget that sort of thing. But that idea of someone who can pull your coattail and say, "Hey, you said that by the 15th you were going to do blah blah blah." Well, where is that? And giving those people that access and that license to you, and you can't get pissed off at them because they said something to you, right?
But that trust, because you're right. Like you keep you it it's a trust to be transparent and vulnerable, right?
There
Like
you
there's
go.
that
Right,
vulnerability
right,
that's part of it. And if you're someone who's not able to trust people, then I think that that's self awareness right there. Then you're saying if there's no one you can trust, listen, we're not, you and I both, neither one of us are advocating for you to just randomly go pick anybody as your accountability partner. We're
Hmm.
not randomly saying that everybody should have access to your life, to your dreams, to your, to your, just to your space that way. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you need good accountability partners to be able to do that. And if you don't have anyone that you trust, or you're distrusting of everyone, then that is self-awareness. You need help.
Right.
You need help. Like, you need to talk to somebody. Like,
Right. That could be one of those. It's not them. It's you.
right,
Right. I
right.
mean, there's with the billions of people on the planet, you can't trust any of them. You can't get along with any of them. You can find a fault in all of them. Then it's
Not
probably
one.
not them. And again, we're human beings. In fact, we are flawed.
Yeah.
Right. And so I believe also in that people can have unreasonable expectations of other human beings that are walking around in flesh and blood, and have been affected by their conditioning and their experiences and their habits in the same way that you have. But some people have made themselves sort of the center, I guess, of their own universe, and it's just never them. It's always somebody else. So those are the people. If they're on that page, then like I'm not the person for them. You might be the most
Mhm.
amazing encourager to get them. And it's funny, the previous episode that we just recorded, what I figured out is like I'm not a good 101 person. Like if it's
Okay.
the first class, well, I'm probably not your dude, right? I'm gonna come at you way too hard. I'm gonna be elbowing you way too hard. I mean, 102, 103, right? Like when we get there and it's more experiential and less, and maybe even less inspirational, to be frankly honest with you, because I'm about that action. Like, what are we gonna get
Yeah.
done? And so there's the where's the what, there's the how, and like you said, be people being self-aware and maybe even knowing that you need a team. So one of the stories that I tell is when I went back to finish my degrees, um, I did my undergrad in 13 months, and then followed the next month. I started again. It was a competency based program, and I did my MBA in 10 months. But there wasn't a single month in there that I did not want to quit.
Yeah.
Right? I was somehow I was losing a grasp on the why, right, which is another big one, because I was tired. I was being challenged. I had other things that were more fun that I wanted to do. And when I tell people that I wanted to quit, they're like, "Ain't no way you would quit because you don't quit anything." Well, in fact, there's a lot of things that I have quit, and there's a lot of things that I haven't finished. But my point in bringing this up is I had a mentor, which is kind of an accountability partner that I had to meet with on a weekly basis. And so in a meeting, we would establish these are the things that you said that you were going to do in the prior week. Where are those things? And then what are you going to do in the week
This
going
week.
forward? So for me, although I was tired, I felt dejected at times. I was just down and going through other things in my life. I did not want to show up to one of those mentor sessions and make excuses.
And be unprepared. You didn't want to
Right.
be unprepared.
Right. So the I've learned that shame is a great motivator for me. I don't know how other people work, but I don't
Oh
want to go
no,
into
I
a
think it's
situation to be
huge for
unprepared.
everybody. Like, listen, if it's a workout plan, I can disappoint myself. But if I'm supposed to meet a trainer at the gym at 6 a.m., oh, I
Right.
will be there at 5:50 ready to go. If
Right.
it's just me and I need to be there, then I'm not gonna show up. But that shame of letting somebody else, or not being prepared, or feeling like I'm holding people back, no, I'll definitely do it. So
Yeah.
you're spot on.
Yeah. And I don't know that enough people. This is one of my. This is so you'll hear one of my gripes now. Is like people at the gym, right? Um, I won't say they get on my nerves, but I don't understand them, right? And so these are the people, and I'm saying this because again, I really do believe that the way you do anything is the way you do everything,
There you go.
right? Like you're always leaving clues about who you are in almost every action that you take. And so when I watch these people who are haplessly just walking through the gym, they sit on a piece of equipment for a few minutes, and then they go off to another piece of equipment for a few minutes. They're on the phone, they got a magazine. They're like, I'm like, you came here with zero plan,
Yep.
right? And do what you want, but I need to understand, because those are the people who will say two things. One, I spent X amount of time in the gym. Check, you did that.
Right.
And then they look and it's like, but I'm not getting the results because you don't have a plan and you're not there challenging yourself. You've been in this gym for 90 minutes and you've yet to break a sweat.
Yeah.
And this is how I see people going through life. They say, well, I signed up for this. I went to that. I'm not getting the results. And this is when they're not owning it. But I'm sure you have to encounter these types of people. There's like, you speak to them. They're like, I did all the stuff you said. It ain't work. How do you address them?
So it's funny because I think we talked about this last time we were talking a little bit about this conversation. Like you have a responsibility, right? Like the effort that you put in matters. And if you put in zero effort, you're gonna get zero results. So part of this is like you talked about, you know, you have to set some deadlines for yourself, some goals and some deadlines, right? And we could go into like business 101 and talk about those, specific, measurable, actionable,
Mm-hmm.
all those things that make goal setting more structured. But the reality of it is that if you're trying to accomplish something,
Mm-hmm.
let's stop with this idea that you've got all the time in the world, right? And I think it's great when people are like, it's not too late. And no, it's not too late, but you can't say it's not too late to give yourself the excuse to not put in effort and to do the work or to put it
Right.
off tomorrow.
Right.
And so, what I say to people is, first of all, you need to write it down. You need to write it out and write it down. If it's in your head, it's not enough. It has to be on paper. Get yourself a notebook. It's funny. I started getting people, like I have one that says, "I'm attracting the life of my dreams." Like, get
Mm.
something that is not just for you to, I'm not putting my grocery list in this notebook, right?
Mm.
Like this is the notebook that has the plan. It has
Right.
the what, it's got the big idea, and then it's got a series of steps that you've got to take in order to get there. And then next to those, you need deadlines for them. And you want to feel accomplished in terms of checking things off, but not just checking it off. Like you said, it's not just I went to the gym, right? Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
I burnt this many calories, right? And then that
Right.
gives you something that's measurable. So yes, I went to the gym, but my goal was to burn this many calories, and that's what I did.
Right.
And so it's the same thing in terms of your career goals. It's the same thing in terms of you trying to take an idea and turn that into a business for yourself. And so it write it down, put yourself some goals in place, and then you need to visit it every day. Like your book should be tattered, it should be written in, it should be crossed out, and something else can be written over it. Like, which is what I mean. Listen, I love the podcast, I love the whole pivot, because that's what it's about, right? Like
Right.
I may write down this plan, but I have to be flexible enough that if something in here isn't working or isn't making sense, then I got to be able to pivot and turn a different direction
Right.
and go into another place with it.
So let's
And
talk about
that's the challenge for people. People get discouraged though, and
right.
that's what usually stops them.
So people can have a dream, and then sometimes people can have a haunted dream,
Ooh.
right? So they have this thing, and then the boogeyman shows up, the monsters show up, the trap doors show up. And so I've encountered a lot of people whose dreams are haunted,
Mm,
right? They're incident prone, and they have this one enemy in particular, other than time, is always fear,
yeah.
right? And that's how our dreams become haunted, where there could be that first person that we, so enthusiastically share our dream with, and they just rain all over our parade.
Mhm.
And they tell us, well, you did this in the past, it didn't work, or they can't see your vision. and so they haunt your dreams. And I think sometimes we invade our own dreams with bad imagery of all the mistakes that we've made in the past, the things that we've failed at, or that we don't feel qualified, or imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Um, so and I saw your reaction when I said haunted dreams. What pops into your head when you hear that term?
So I am huge. I have been talking to people about fear for so long because I believe that fear is a self-imposed jail and prison that you're putting yourself in. And it's like the haunted house, right? Like, get out the house. Like, why are we staying in this haunted house? I'm not
Hmm.
spending the night here. Like, we're leaving, right? Like, it's like, the movie would be done by 30 minutes in. Because once I walk in and it looks crazy, I'm out. I'm
I'm
not. I'm
out.
not staying in this haunted house,
Right,
right? And so that's how I feel about fear. It's a self-imposed prison or jail that you're putting yourself in.
right,
And at some point, listen, we're all going to do it. We all have those moments, but you have to choose whether or not you're going to serve a 1 day sentence, a 1 week sentence, a 1 year sentence, a 10-year sentence. And so, the dreams are going to get haunted. Okay. You're going to have fear that are going to set in. Okay. But what are you going to do? Like, do
right,
you do you spend and move and buy the haunted house,
right,
or do you do you say, you know what? I don't think I'm going to buy this house, right? Like,
right,
I think I'm gonna leave this one. And
right,
so you gotta be able to get out of that self-imposed fear. And you will the more and more you recognize when it happens, the easier it is to start snapping yourself out of it quickly. Like, sometimes it could take you a week to say, oh crap, I've been in this for a week. And then as you start getting better with it, you'll start saying it on the same day. You'll say, okay, this was a bad day.
right.
And tomorrow I'm gonna change the sheets on this bed. I'm gonna sleep in some clean sheets, and tomorrow when I wake up, it's gonna be better. And so, but initially, when that fear sets in, especially if it's been your operating procedure, it takes you a minute to recognize that you're doing it. It takes you a minute to recognize that you're being haunted,
Right.
and you got to get out of it.
So a couple things, and so this reminds me now of you actually talking about that, which I thought was so powerful, which is, that there are people who are imprisoned who are serving time. They know how long they're going to be there.
Yeah,
But what you expressed is that really, if fear is in fact a jail, it's the one that you can determine how long the sentence is going to be.
yeah.
Right? I've been in this for 5 minutes. I'm warden. Open
I'm
this door
out.
and let me out of it. Right.
Right.
A day, a week, you get to choose. And then I thought further about what you said because I thought that was so powerful. But there are people who have been in the jail for so long, they've now become marketing and promotion.
They're institutionalized, right? They're
Yeah, and so,
institutionalized.
but they're attracting other people. But what they're looking for is for people to embrace and join their story.
I got you. They're
Join,
like in
join,
that
join my
misery with them.
reason, so you understand why this is where I am. Please understand. Absolve me of my responsibility to contribute to humanity.
Yeah,
And the reason I say it that way is we have these dreams, we have these visions, we have these goals, but ultimately, everything that we want to do, if it truly has merit to me, is going to bless somebody else's life. It's going to
yeah,
impact somebody else's life. It's going to help make somebody else's life better. And the problems in the world persist because people are not giving their answer.
yeah,
And your dream, your vision, your goal, that is an answer for someone else, for an entire community, for an entire city, could be for an entire nation. But people are like, no, you have to understand why I'm here and why it makes no sense for you to expect anything more of me.
yeah,
So they've become marketing and promotion for their haunted dream. Come
yeah.
in and see why I'm here. Matter of fact, why don't you sit in this jail
Yeah, come
with
spend the night
me?
with me in jail. Come spend the night,
Because
right?
you got to be just as messed up as me. So let me get your
Oof.
thoughts on this too, because this is now I'm on my soapbox now, JB.
Okay.
That that the other thing that I believe, because of social media, that people are watching and listening to these people that they admire, and they believe that these people are leaving them breadcrumbs to a similar level of success and accomplishment, and is just smoke and mirrors. Like, that's not their real life. And I think it gets people's expectations out of whack. And I think it breeds this sense of entitlement. Like, it should have happened for me by now, or I shouldn't have to work this hard.
It's comparison. It's comparison. You are, these people are, you're basically comparing yourself to someone on social media and
Mhm.
their journey and all of that. And I'm sorry. I mean, for me, the three things that hold people back are fear, comparison, and then that procrastination of, not executing, right? Like
Yeah.
what we were talking about. And if you think about comparison, like here's how it goes. Stop comparing and start preparing yourself. Like,
Mm.
if you would stop comparing yourself to others, you could actually take the time to prepare yourself and arm yourself with what you need,
Wow.
but you're spending your time, stalking somebody on social media and following their every move instead of making your own moves
Right.
or figuring out what your own moves are. And just because you start a t-shirt business and somebody else has a t-shirt business, you
Right.
don't have to compare your business to theirs.
Right.
They can have a successful business and you can too. It doesn't take away from the product that you're offering and the value that you bring and the service that you're providing.
Right.
But that level of comparison is what holds us back. It lets us see the great in other people and really kind of see the negative in ourselves. It's like
Right.
they're doing everything wonderful and it's working for them and nothing's working for me. And so when you do that level of comparing, you don't feel like you need to prepare. You're not putting forth the
Right.
effort to prepare. So stop comparing and start preparing is really.
So, to you and your experience, do you see men and women falling victim to comparison equally, or in some way different?
Well, it's always different. I mean, it's definitely equal, but it's always different in the sense that a lot of times women are more openly sort of, I hate to use the word emotional about it, but more openly vocal and just kind of outward with it. And a lot of times I find that men don't recognize that they're doing it or don't really want to admit to the fact that they're doing it. But I mean, it's, I mean, seriously, like
Oh
even
no,
when,
let me give you from a man's point of view then.
please, please.
This is my view of the world.
Okay.
Is that most men right around the age of 40 start dealing in report cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that they'll look at the man next to him. What does he have? What does he accomplish? What does he do? What does he earn? That's a big one for us. It's like, who's making the money? Um, and so that comparison becomes active to the point where people change their social circles. And I think it is the perception largely drawn around, like, usually by 40, like, you've hit a trajectory, like you've hit a momentum, a pace, a speed. And trajectory is real important because that's about where something's going to
Going
land,
up. Yeah.
right? And I think that people have self-pronounced how far they can go by a certain age. This person is already beyond me, and what they'll do is disconnect themselves from people who have, at a certain age, accomplished more than they have or attained more than they have, and they will make sure that they congregate with people who have only reached a similar level of accomplishment. And what they've done is count themselves out,
Mm-hmm.
right? To
Yeah.
understand that, no, in fact, it's in your 40s, right? And this is actually, now I think about it, it was actually written about in Think and Grow Rich. For most men, it's in their 40s. That's where you're able to leverage all the stuff that you learned in your 20s and 30s. And usually, one of the best earning decades for most men is actually in their 40s. And that momentum can build through your 40s into your 50s. And then it's just like a wave that can't be stopped. but because they get stuck in comparing what I have versus this guy, and I'm not going to talk to him. So like there are a lot of men who won't ask me questions because their perception is that I'm doing better, and I may be today making
Right.
more. But again, they just look at money and cars and houses.
Mhm.
They don't ask about relationships and all the other things that really make your life. But what they do is my point is they will disconnect themselves from sources of help, right? Sources of people who can help them solve problems, help them find resources to pursue their dream because they get stuck in comparison because men fall more victim to their ego.
So I'm glad you said ego because I didn't want to say the E word, but
Ego. It's my show. I will say
listen,
ego.
oh
It
my
is what it
God,
is.
I wanted
The
to say
most
the E
fragile,
word.
JB, the most fragile thing on the planet is a man's ego.
Ooh, listen, I wanted to say it because, like I said, they won't admit it, but it's their ego that stops them from really saying that. But see,
Mm-hmm.
what you talked about, and this is if there's something that we could leave with people or really try to encourage them. If you think about your circle, or even if I think about my circle, there are individuals in my circle that I mentor, right? That I am working with to help bring them up, right? And then I have people that are in my circle that are at the same level. We have a lot in common. There's a whole lot of similarities. But then there are people in my circle that I don't have a problem saying are, I don't want to say, like, above me. You know what I mean? And really, I do that because that for me helps to elevate me to the next level. And so if you're only, or if you're cutting people out of your circle or eliminating people from your circle because they've got more than you, or they think they're better than you, or whatever these perceptions are that we how we coin it, you're missing out on an opportunity to kind of step your game up and take yourself to the next level. And so it is okay for you to have people that you mentor. It is okay for you to have a group of individuals that you feel comfortable with because you guys have so many similarities and there's so much to talk about. But get uncomfortable and stay in the circle or in those conversations with people that are doing more and have more, because guess what, it'll make you step your game. It's the shame that we talked about.
Right.
It'll make
Woo.
you step your game up.
Step your
So you're
game up.
like, well, you know what, if they can do it, then I can do it. There's a
Right.
psychological term called act as if, right? And I try to get
Mm.
people to do this. It's called act as if. And we may want to call it fronting or however you want to do it. But when
Oh,
you
the
act as
fake it
if,
until you make it.
right,
Fake it
fake it
until you
till you
make it.
make it.
Oh my
But when
God.
you
Yeah.
act as if, what starts to happen is the more and more you start talking about it or walking it, it magically starts to seep on you and it starts to get into you, and you find yourself becoming what you were acting as if you were.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so short-sighted to cut people out of your circle because you're comparing, because of your ego, because your emotions got in the way.
Right. Well, and the other thing that can happen too is like and certainly shame can be a motivator. Again, I've been very transparent to say that there were many years of my life where my drive was not to succeed. It was simply to not fail. So I was trying to outrun failure and simply ran into success. It was
Yeah.
not because I had this great plan and these amazing goals and this super great discipline. But the other thing, so shame, and that type of it has its place. Now I'll tell you one of the downsides is you learn how to not celebrate anything. Everything is
Mm.
plastic, everything is temporary. It all came out of the microwave. We did this, done, we on to the next thing. And that is actually, if I have a character flaw, probably many, but that is one of them. I have never been I don't know how to celebrate successes the way that probably would be helpful to my psyche. But
Mm.
we'll come back. We can deal with my issues in a minute. I think that the other thing that people can get, if you're around the right types of people who have done or are doing better than you, know more, have accomplished more, have more resources, is oftentimes they're inviting you into a community.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to walk through that door and understand that they're being gracious, right? Because they don't have you there. But again, because people have these haunted dreams, they think everyone's the boogeyman is out to get
Yeah.
them. And so that's a tough piece. So let me ask you this before we run out of time. And I've truly enjoyed this conversation in ways I can't even tell you.
I did too. I'm
Um,
excited.
so one is what is next for you? So I can tell you what I see.
Listen, well, first of
Like
all, you gotta be my accountability partner. Let's listen.
right.
I'm I'm gonna need to add you to my accountability team. Let's be clear.
Oh, I'm all about it. So but I mean, as a career coach, as a life coach, as a business coach, like your disposition, your energy, the fact that you have not just a perspective or point of view, but it is informed, right?
Yeah,
Both through experience and information. Like you don't have to tell me that. I know it, right?
yeah.
And just for people who are watching, like I literally had two questions for you, and I haven't even asked them yet, right? And may not. Nope, I have not asked them that. I haven't asked them yet. And so we've been able to have this whole conversation, and I've been kind of throwing things out at you, and it's like skeet shooting. I throw some out, you're like, got it, done, right? Because you are that able and that prepared. So in terms of how you go forward and impact the lives of people, what's next for JB or
So
Jourdeanna? I don't know
in
why I didn't
terms of,
call you. Started with the JB stuff. It's
I know. I
Jourdeanna.
mean, we could have said Jourdeanna. I mean, we
I
could have
know.
said Jourdeanna. We
Okay,
could
but
have
I
went.
need it needs to be said.
Yes.
But
It,
that is
so
Jourdeanna.
Jourdeanna, and that's why my accountability coach just told me I need to make sure I use my full name. So, but so here's what I will say in terms of being transparent to you and transparent to everyone who's
Mhm,
watching this. Um, I have for the longest time wanted to start um, doing sort of these public speaking and motivational seminars to encourage people in terms of their career goals and just life goals, right?
mhm,
That everybody has options and choices, and just really getting people to understand that. One of my downsides is that I'm one of those people who felt like everything needed to be right and perfect and timing, and
mhm,
that the stars needed to align, and that I needed to have it all figured out from A to Z
mhm,
before I could even get started. And what 2020 has truly done for me is stopped that thought process.
okay,
Now, I've been fortunate. I'm still working full time. I'm working remote. And so I haven't had, some of the challenges that other people have had. But it also forced me to say, knock it off. Like, life is going to happen. And the things that we're talking about need to be heard by people. And so for me, I am launching a platform called Chosen Career Consultants. And really, it's about that word chosen and choices.
mhm,
And it's not, just your traditional careers. It's people that are looking to become entrepreneurs, people who've been stay-at-home moms that think that they don't have anything to put on a resume or skill set to be able to transition into something new. And so for me, that's what 2020 is going to be about. And so doing more of these podcasts to get out there and just start talking to people and encouraging people. And one of the things that you said as part of this, shame on me for not launching this sooner, because so many people needed this even before the pandemic. And so, what's next for me is I don't want to hold me back from the rest of the world anymore. I'm ready to unleash myself on the I'm ready
let me
to
tell you
unleash
what.
myself. I'm
it's
ready to
part
give
of
myself to the world.
it's part of the reason that I started Pivot Play, right? I've been doing some, but you kind of doing it, you're not really doing it, you kind of doing, you're not
Right.
really. And what this does, frankly, is allows you to build content. It gives a repository of interactions. And so if people want to say, I want to know his style, go watch a couple of episodes. You'll get a picture of it. But that whole idea, I want to go back to something you said though. This whole idea of having everything in place.
Mhm.
Let me say this. I believe that 70 to 80% is more than enough for massive success. And I'm talking about head over heels. I didn't know this was possible success. And what we've learned is, so let's go to 80% because we talk about the 80-20 rule and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But here's what I know is that if you get something to 80%, it is enough. And we live in an 80% world, right? So for instance, Facebook was not, what it is now when it started, right? Look at any piece of software that comes about from Microsoft or anybody else. What they really are publishing is a beta test. They're looking to
Mhm.
put it out there, get the feedback, let you experience the errors and the crashes on your system. They know that it's not 100% when they put it out. It doesn't stop them from putting it out. It doesn't
Exactly.
stop them from marketing it from what its potential is, right? They know, like, we'll get to it. You guys are going to tell us which is, because here's what I know about, and I'm going to the software example, but they already have a list of documented bugs before they release it.
And
You
probably a prototype for 2.0 or 3.0, like
and that's
whatever the
the
next
other
version is
thing.
going to be.
They already know, right? People are,
Yeah.
oh my God. You didn't, girl, you didn't say something right there. People are so enamored and so committed to V1 version 1 that
Right.
no, what your dream is supposed to be is iterative. It's supposed to be generational.
Yeah.
You can release V1, but you need to already have designed V2 and be like continue to graduate
Yeah.
the dream. And that's the other thing. People put too much into their first volley. They put too much. That you don't need to have all that out there to give it credibility. And the reason that people don't do it is the search for credibility. Right.
But
So
you know
then we
what?
go back to imposter syndrome. We get a
But
whole
you know
bunch of
what?
stuff in there.
That's the takeaway. The takeaway in terms of how you lean into the chain is you dip your body. It's like riding a motorcycle. You better dip into it, hold on, and keep going. Because guess what? When you come around the bend, you'll have something else or a new
Right.
turn or a new avenue for you to be able to
Yep.
go into it. And so that's and like I said, I put myself out there in terms of transparency. Nothing is going to be 100%. Nothing
Right.
works 100% of the time.
Right.
So to think that you have to have it 100% figured out
No.
to get started is wrong. And so start now. Start
Right.
with fear. Start with hesitation. Start with uncertainty. Start right
Yeah.
now and build from there. Start.
And so let me add on to that is that search for perfection, the 100%. Here's what I know, and this is from my line of work specifically, is that if you get something to 80% and you try to close the gap for that remaining 20%, that remaining 20% is so expensive and takes so much time that at the end of the day, it eventually has no value, right? Because we have to consider the time that something takes and the money that it costs to do it. Your return, like all your profits, like all your revenue, your margins, really is the word I'm looking for. Your margins are destroyed because you are searching for perfection.
Yeah.
It's just not necessary. And but it keeps people on a hamster wheel. It keeps them what they're trying to do. I think sometimes, and I do the same thing. We're trying to get ourselves ready. We're trying to be enough. We're trying
Yeah.
to be credible. We're trying to be
That's it.
no.
That's it. Trying to be
Simply
enough.
bring the answer.
Yep.
And the audience, the people that you are intended to serve, will find you. They will be drawn to you like a magnet because you simply held up your hand and said, I'm here.
And I'm enough. And I'm enough.
Right, right. And some people are going to hear you. Some people are not going to hear you. Other people are going to perceive you like a lighthouse in the middle of a storm.
Yep.
That like frequency will draw them to you, and those will be your people. 100 people can walk past you, But the next two are like, you're the person I've been looking for. And
Yeah,
we have to be willing to put ourselves out there in that way. And just like you said, I'm enough.
I'm enough.
I'm enough.
Yeah,
And I don't
and
know it
that's
all.
and if you help, for me where I'm at now, if the message resonates and it helps for people, then it's for people that I was intended to help. And
Right.
so, that like you said, that need of having to feel like everybody is paying attention, it's just not necessary. Like,
Right.
and so you've got choices, you've got options, and now it's time to take this 2020 and start putting some effort and action to them. Put action to
Right.
them.
Right. The risk of 2020 is part of what's in the design of it is to continually to open this chasm between the haves and the haves not,
Yeah,
and make it even wider than it is today. And this is why it is imperative for people to seek out, recognize, and execute on their opportunities, because you don't want to be this lower rung of society, because I don't care who you're voting for. I don't care what your ideological leanings are. You are a number. You are marked for how much money they can make off you, and then they're going to be willing to put you in the ground to keeping you here. We have an opportunity now to build, design, plan, prepare, as you said, and be in position to take advantage of these opportunities that are here. Even
yeah.
if it doesn't look like anything's happening because people are freaking out about the pandemic, be in a position of readiness, because we are approaching a new normal, and you want to make sure that you have the place in it. This is the time to get it done. That's
Get
just
ready, get ready. You got options and choices. Get ready.
so.
Let's go.
Cuzzo, I love you. I appreciate you. This has been
It's so much fun. I feel like we just been having a good old conversation.
right,
Like,
right.
want to
And
do
you,
this again? Invite me
and
back. Invite
oh,
me back.
definitely. And we'll and you left some amazing breadcrumbs for people. We have people in our audience who really listen and pay attention, and are perceiving value. And so what I'm saying to you from the place that I sit and my particular experience, in business, in the executive space, and I think what I understand really well is strategy, but I also understand scale,
Okay.
right? And it's just by virtue of what I do, right? So I can look at the one thing and say, okay, well, you want to have 100 of those, or you want to have 1,000 of them. This is the structure we need to build around that. So I'm saying all that to say, if there's anything that I can do to impart or help or work or whatever you need, you have access to all my experience, and frankly, the experience of my network.
Oh
That's
well,
just
I listen. I appreciate that, and I was serious. In terms of the accountability person, like I need that, and I know that having someone with that Thompson family, energy and swag is going to make it that much better.
oh
So
my god,
I
yeah.
appreciate it. You're on the record now as saying that, so I
Oh
appreciate
yeah,
that.
and it's out there. It's out there live.
It
So I
sure is.
love you. I appreciate you, and we'll have to do this again. There's so much
Yes, please,
that we
please.
didn't even scratch the surface of. We'll edit this. We'll get this out soon. But I love you so much.
I love you. I so
you're
appreciate it. This was so much fun.
you're amazing. All right, folks, we're out of here.